Good morning, everyone. We're just letting folks in. We'll get started shortly. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. We will be muting everybody to avoid static and background noise. I am Rochelle Isaac from the English Department and Chair of Faculty Council. Thank you for joining us on this very cold day, and thanks to all of you who submitted questions and shared your concerns. Please submit additional questions in the chat as they come up for you, and we will get to as many as we can. The bulk of the questions received, once again, focused on enrollment, course modality, course cancellations, and vaccine requirements. We want to address all of your questions, so we'll get started promptly. As usual, the town hall is being recorded and a link of the recording will be circulated shortly. I'd like to thank our sign language interpreters for their assistance today. And with that, I'd like to present President Adams. Hello, President Adams. How are you?
Good morning, Rochelle. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning.
It's cold today.
Very.
A serious winter day in Long Island City, but it's Friday.
It is Friday. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
So should we get started?
Let's do it.
Okay. Can you please provide an update on spring enrollment?
Yes. We are, let's see, 7 weeks out. Saturday, March 5th is the first day of our Spring 1 classes. And, our enrollment is going well, but, as usual, when you're still 7 weeks out, we start to get into the nail biting phase. College students not known for doing things in advance. LaGuardia students no different. So many of them wait to the last minute to register for the spring semester classes. But in any event, we're doing all right. I would say that we still have a challenge with returning students. I'll split that a little more detail there, Rochelle. Our communications and marketing team, working with enrollment management, with recruitment and admissions, are seeing an encouraging increase in the interest of freshmen, basically in applications for new students. In fact, we're ahead of where we were at this time last year with the number of applications for new students, for freshmen. And that's because of some really amazing social media marketing that's been going on behind the scenes. Most of us don't see it, but it's having a really good effect. So we're confident that we're going to be able to convert a lot of those applicants into freshmen. But again, where we're concerned is a low level of enrollment amongst our returning students. Of course, the bulk of our students for the spring semester. And we're, it's obvious, but I guess that we're doing everything we can do to get their attention, to reach out to them. Loretta Capuano and the team at this SIC, the Student Information Center, calling and texting and emailing, admissions, conversion team, everybody under the leadership of Interim Associate Dean, Dr. Gail Bax-Jarrett. It's a full court press to get our returning students to indeed return. So we're pushing ahead and I'm optimistic.
Okay. Faculty would like to have a specific date by which the college will make a call on either changing in-person courses to online or adding online courses because of low enrollment in in-person courses. And of course, they're saying the closer this date is to the start of the spring semester, the more chaotic this transition will be for everyone.
Right. Well, that's a very helpful question, Rochelle. You know, because you serve in my president's cabinet. We talk about this every Monday morning. This question of modality and are the modalities that we have for the spring schedule affecting enrollment? And I know a lot of people think that it's a factor. So let me give an update on this because there is some news actually to share with you all this morning on this topic. Last week, we had a Senate meeting and that I was at which I heard directly from faculty who were very concerned about low, in some cases, single-digit enrollment in in-person classes, and the sense that the online or remote classes that we have were filling up. And so you would call that kind of, technically, it's varying fill rates. What's the rate at which the in-person classes are filling up, the rate at which hybrid classes are filling up, the rate at which fully remote classes are filling up? And so, yes, this has been on my mind. And as I say, thanks to this very helpful input from several faculty members at Senate. You're in Senate, Rochelle, you were there, you remember the thing. I came up with a recommendation with the support of the cabinet that I delivered to the chancellor the next day, which was last week, Thursday, in which I said that at LaGuardia, we wanted to lower the percentage of in-person classes where we had been at 75, 76%. I proposed that we lower it to 50%. And I proposed that we have a condition that faculty be given the right, if you will, to require student screens to be turned on in remote classes. Next day, I think it was Friday, the chancellor put out, actually it was EVC Dan Lemons, the university provost, did put out an update to all the presidents. And they did agree with some aspects of my proposal. And I should quickly say, I'm sure I was not the only CUNY president advocating for a change in the modality goal. But I was one of them, and I know my voice was heard. But anyway, they didn't agree to go down to 50%, but they did agree to go down to 55%. And they also didn't agree, or let's just say they didn't comment on my suggestion that faculty have the authority to require screens on, an option for faculty, right? They didn't comment on that, so we'll set that question aside and I'll ask you to use your best judgment as faculty in that matter. But this does mean we can now at LaGuardia convert some number of in-person classes that have low enrollments to hybrid or online sections. And Paul Arcario, our provost, and I discussed this with chairs 2 days ago, Wednesday morning. And the chairs are now in the process, and this is department by department, of deciding which sections can be converted, if any, to from fully in-person to remote. And so so everybody knows, the floor is now 55% fully in person. But as by department, there are departments like health sciences that just because of the way they teach and accreditation requirements and other things related to their pedagogy in, say, nursing, they're always going to be a very high percentage of in-person. They have to be. So health sciences could end up being, I'm making this up, Rochelle, 65, 70% in person
Mhm.
Another department might come all the way down to 55%. So we have 9 academic departments, including the library, of course. But so you see situations now where individually departments will determine, obviously under the leadership of the chair, whether they want to be anywhere from 55% in-person classes and up to whatever the percentage they view as appropriate. This means, again, in the coming days into early next week, we will be able to make these new sections available to students, tying back to the enrollment question,
Mhm.
back to this idea that, and I know it's been voiced by many, and I'm trying to say this morning, I heard you. I'm the biggest fan of in-person. I think you all know that. I'm reluctant to support the creation of more online courses, except in these incredible circumstances, right? I recognize that, and it's important to adapt to the circumstances and to listen to the voices of our students, and in particular to our faculty. So yes, we will. I think this is going to, getting back to question number 1, Rochelle,
Mhm.
change in modality here at LaGuardia, again, but department by department, with a schedule next week that will be revised. And we're doing this as quickly as possible. Part of the question you just read to me said, when will this happen with respect to the start of the semester? We're not waiting, because that would be confusing. We're doing it in the next few days. So there will be students affected by this who want to have an in-person class that then gets converted, and we'll have to work with them. So we want to minimize that impact on students who've already registered. Let me give one last, detail to this big question, because it really is probably one of the most important things we're going to talk about this morning. And that is where we are, just so people have an understanding in this question of how the different types of classes are filling up, the fill rate question. For the spring semester, we have scheduled about 2,100 sections, 2,104 to be precise. And I'm only talking now about spring 1. Students often enroll for spring 2 and spring 1 together, but I'll just give you the data for spring 1 because it's March 5th and it's what's on our minds. So of those 2,100 sections that we scheduled, 2,100 does include spring 2. So you back it out, it's closer, I have to check my notes, it's really 1,600 for spring 1. So there's 1,623 sections in the schedule. And when we put the schedule up, 62% of those were fully in person, 9% were hybrid, and 18% were remote. So that's what we've put up, that's what's up now and what's filling. And someone in the audience might say, wait, 62%? I thought it was 76%. It's true, the original schedule had 76%, which exceeded the chancellor's goal of 70%. But we don't always put everything up on the schedule at the same starting point. We wait to see how things fill up. So we held back 11% of those sections, right? Knowing, frankly, that it was going to be hard to fill them. And so we started out with 62. We have the capacity, if students overwhelmed us, with wanting to do in person, we could go back up to 76%. But we actually put into the schedule 62. And those in-person sections are about, this is as of last week, 36% full. If you think of the number of seats in all of those in-person sections, 36%. You'll see where the story is going, Rochelle, and it gets at the question of fill rates. The hybrids are at about 55%. And the remote classes, the fully online classes, are 64%. But let's not overplay this fill rate question, because the math majors in this Zoom will remind everybody that each one of those modalities started out with a different number of seats available. So you can't, comparing the percentages is misleading. If we had 100 seats offered for in-person, 100 offered for hybrid, 100 offered online, and we compared fill rates, you would actually see kind of what's the popular vote, right? What do students want? Of course, we have a lower fill rate for in-person because that's the vast majority of seats available. So in any case, I just want to, it's a little wonky of me, I apologize, but I want to downplay the fill rate argument and go back to the good news of the morning, which is, yes, we are in the process right now of creating more hybrid and online sections.
So this update answered a lot of questions that I have here. So I just want to reiterate, chairs will have discretion to shift modality, and that's starting now.
Yes.
Okay. How will this, we have a question in the chat. How will this 55% update impact staff, remote/in-person expectations?
This is a good question. And I'm sorry there's not a clearer answer on this, but this is CUNY. And right now, with respect to vaccination policy and with respect to returning to campus, kind of almost work attendance policy, I think that, there's some discrepancies, right? It's uneven and in some ways could be seen as unfair. So, here's what we know. Until February 28th, the expectation across the CUNY system is to have a 50% in-person or attendance for staff. So, today is the 21st of January. We've got another more than a month where the goal should be, and it's department by department, manager by manager, everyone's supposed to be at 50%. And there was this idea that it was going to jump up to 70% when the semester started, which I always thought was complicated because it means staff is, 70% would be 7 out of 10 days in a payroll cycle. So like 1 week you work 4 days on campus and 3 at home. The next week you work 3 days on campus. Very hard for managers and for HR to manage all that. So we're going to have to come back with a better answer for staff. And again, I apologize. For now, we're at 50%, or we should be, until February 28th. That's the CUNY policy. This is a situation where the 12-6 schools, the 3 of us who have semesters that start late, and therefore we can push back the date at which staff should return to campus. We're out of sync with the rest of the system. And so we need guidance from the CUNY central office on, what's the date and what's the goal? Will the goal be 70? I think that's what the question in the chat is all about. Will it still be 70 if the instructional modality goal was reduced to 55? Great question. We got a few more weeks to look at that.
Okay. In-person enrollment remains low compared to online enrollment. Some students may be hesitant to enroll because quite a bit of in-person classes were canceled last semester, requiring students and faculty to reshuffle their schedules. An unwavering commitment to in-person learning can help build student confidence around course selection and scheduling. Will admin consider temporarily running in-person classes even with lower numbers, given the transitional nature of the upcoming semester?
Well, this is an important question that's related, to what we start to think about as we approach a new semester. The difficult subject of class cancellations, right? And right now it's too early to be, have a clear view on this because we have 7 weeks of enrollment still to go through. So we'll see where we end up. But I want to remind people that our watchword or our approach is flexibility. We want to be flexible. And there are always situations where we run classes that have, 10, 12, 14 students below the typical threshold. And we'll work to the extent that we can. We have a budget challenge, an ongoing budget deficit, as everybody knows. But we're going to be flexible again for spring with this issue in mind that we want to offer students in-person classes. I feel, Paul Arcari, our provost, and I feel, that we asked the faculty to do a schedule that in the end was 76% in person. And I still feel this debt of gratitude to all of you who did that, knowing, of course, as we all do, that it's the best thing for our students. And so I know faculty feel strongly like, well, I'm prepared to do this. And if my enrollment in my section is, 12 students, I hope you will still run it. I think that's a very fair thing to say. It's a very understandable position. And so we're with you. We want to be flexible. we probably will have to run some low enrollment in-person classes. We can't really afford to run single digit classes. We can't have a class that was supposed to have 18 students have 3. I mean, that just becomes too uneconomic when you're in the single digits. But yes, we'll be flexible. And again, to the person who wrote the question, for 2 reasons, right? One is because we do really want to remind students, this is the best way for you to learn. This is the college experience you signed up for. It's the college experience that we want to give you, that we're the best at, right? So there is a very important message to students about the importance of in-person classes. We have to hammer that home. But also, I think we have to be respectful of all the faculty, which is really everybody, that agrees with this and made a commitment to teach in person in the middle of a pandemic.
Do we have a date set for class cancellations?
We don't yet, Rochelle. It's generally around the first week, the beginning of the semester. But under these conditions and with things with enrollment being fluid, we don't have a precise date. We will soon. As a reminder, the first day of classes on Saturday classes is Saturday, March 5th. So you're talking 7 weeks from tomorrow.
Well, I think you kind of answered this one, but can the date after which we switch modality precede the class cancellation date by 2 weeks or so?
Better. We're doing it now.
They wanted to stress that the 2-week period will allow for additional enrollment and will help avoid class cancellations, the loss of adjunct jobs, full-time faculty owing classes in the coming.
Whoever wrote that question could get a job in enrollment management any day. That's exactly right. We have to do this quickly so students are aware of these new options, and those that are on the fence about, I don't want to go back to LaGuardia in person, may all of a sudden have an online option, and so they register, right? So yeah, once the chairs and the faculty have made these changes, trust me, our communications team, the SAC, everybody enrollment is going to be communicating with students. Again, going back to what I said in the first question, especially a sizable number of returning students who have not yet committed to returning. They're waiting to see what's going on. I also hope, by the way, they're waiting to see what's happening in the city with respect to Omicron. And I hope they, like the rest of us, are encouraged by a significant drop in the positivity rate since the holidays, a significant drop in average daily new cases. I mean, the numbers are looking good. I knock some wood when I say this, but numbers are looking good. And I hope our students begin to feel, as the next few weeks go by, that coming back to LaGuardia makes sense and can be done in a safe and healthy way.
There's a question in the chat. If a class starts online, is there any chance it could flip to in-person in the middle?
No, it's really hard to do that because it violates an important consumer protection issue, which is, students are paying for their classes, let's remember, and they make a decision and they pay with their financial aid, their hard-earned cash, for a certain modality. And you really, unless it's extraordinary circumstances like March of 2020, you're not supposed to switch modality in the middle of the semester. It's unfair. It's not what the students paid for. So there has to be extraordinary conditions to do that.
Let's do one more on course modality on enrollment. If enrollment in in-person classes does not improve, will we convert most sections to online, given that online sections have better enrollment numbers currently?
Well, again, I think we covered that. Yes, we're doing it right now.
Okay, so let's talk about COVID protocols. The governor and the chancellor are requiring that faculty, but not staff, be vaccinated. This will only add to the confusion and fear many are experiencing about in-person work. What is the college's response? Will you follow suit or require staff to be vaccinated as well?
Well, we're part of the CUNY system, so we have to follow suit. In other words, we have to follow the CUNY policy on this. And right now, I would just say that it's an incomplete policy. So let's think about this. We began with a mandate for student vaccination, that students had to be fully vaccinated and pretty soon they'll have to have boosters as well, to come to campus. Well, that was incomplete at the time because faculty and staff had no such mandate. More recently, as the governor announced in her State of the State address, SUNY and CUNY faculty are required to be vaccinated. So now for the spring semester, our faculty, most of whom are vaccinated already anyway, but now 100%, our faculty who 100% of those that are going to come to campus must be fully vaccinated. So we're 2/3 of the way there, right, Rochelle? We got the students vaccinated, the faculty vaccinated, but wait, not the staff. It's incomplete. My own view is yes. Of course, my own view is not the rule, but that there should be a vaccine mandate for staff, and then we could guarantee that everyone in this and our 2 other buildings here on campus fully vaccinated. We're going to start the semester, unless things change, with our students vaccinated and our faculty vaccinated, which, by the way, very important for classrooms. No more mixed situations, vaccinated and unvaccinated, in a classroom. So that's very important because that's why we're here. But for staff, again, most of whom are vaccinated anyway, the mandate is incomplete. My sense is that the CUNY Central Office is working on this. It's a negotiation with city policy and state policy and various unions, and we'll see what happens. But my view is that's incomplete and we need to get there.
So someone's asking, do you think faculty and staff will be required to get vaccinated prior to February 22nd? I know you're saying it's incomplete. Do you think they'll complete it by that time, prior to February 22nd?
Well, again, for staff, there's no such requirement yet. I would say, I think we could expect it to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. And yes, there is now a mandate for faculty. I would say for faculty and staff that are working 100% remotely and don't have any reason to come to campus, I suppose, they can stay unvaccinated if that's their choice. But to get on campus for any reason, you'd have to be fully vaccinated. Staff, of course, let me remind everybody, staff who are not vaccinated, and it's not many, but they still must do every 7 days, they must have a negative PCR COVID test administered here in E-building on the 2nd floor. So we know that either everyone in this building is vaccinated, fully vaccinated, or a negative COVID test within 7 days, PCR test. So it is, I want to assure people, to the best of our ability, it is a safe work environment.
Yeah, someone's saying in a previous email, it was noted that students who will be attending in-person modalities will be required to also have the booster shot. Is this still accurate? And when is the deadline for this? And someone's in the chat's adding, do students know this?
Yeah, students know it the way the rest of us do if we sort of see it in the papers or on the evening news. And in fact, in fairness, the Chancellor's office has said boosters are going to be required of students, but no details yet. Boosters, the general rule, I think, will be when you become eligible for the booster, you're going to have to get one. But remember, everybody becomes eligible at a different time based on when you started to get vaccinated, no matter whatever vaccine you took. And so, unlike other things, it's a little hard to say, hey, April 1st, every student has to have a booster, because many students would not be eligible for the booster. So the setting of a date for this is hard. And it's another thing that's tricky is what's the enforcement? If the enforcement is a student without a booster is considered not fully vaccinated by sort of definition, so doesn't have access to campus. Well, if that happens in the middle of the semester, what is a student supposed to do? Now, that could be an incentive to get the booster. And it's a little, I'll just, as an aside, personal observation here, but if you've already agreed with the importance of vaccination, as fortunately most people in this city, state, and country have by now, you shouldn't have much of an objection, a philosophical or political objection to a booster, because it's like another shot, and you've already taken the shots. So my hope is that, yeah, the students are our students may take some prodding and encouragement and reminders, and maybe we could get a van on campus, like a vaccination van that's a booster van. I know BP sure I'm going to look at that, but we got to make it easy for students to get boosted because they should. But the deadline is not yet set.
Okay, so we're considering the booster van. So if faculty teaching in-person test positive for COVID, can the class move online temporarily during the instructor's period of isolation rather than trying to continue meeting in person with a substitute instructor? If so, it would be helpful to include this as a policy on the syllabus so students know. Likewise, if a number of students in an in-person class test positive, could the class temporarily move online?
Yes and yes. It's really the discretion of the faculty member. I mean, it's not unlike if you are teaching a course and a student, let's pretend there's no pandemic. That's a nice way to imagine the world. Came down with a bad case of the flu or something else and was out of class for a week or 10 days, you alternate assignments, maybe a makeup assignment, flexibility to the faculty member to determine what to do. And yes, flexibility to the faculty member to, if the faculty member is sick, to turn that class temporarily, to deliver those classes temporarily, remotely. Yes. Convert the whole course. Remember, we said we can't do that.
Right.
But
We could do it, yeah.
a little brief change to accommodate the faculty member? Absolutely.
Of course, the chairs will be informed.
Not of course, they have to be. Work that out with your chair.
Okay. After seeing the data that everyone can catch Omicron, no matter the vaccine status, how does CUNY justify mandating the vaccine for students and faculty if it just protects the person taking it? The assumption is that everyone is protected from taking the vaccine, but clearly we are seeing that this is not the case for Omicron. I am not saying that vaccines do not work, but by implementing a mandate, especially for the booster, fewer people could consider our college, leading to lower enrollment.
Rochelle, I'm going to confess, I don't totally understand the question. Is the question, are we concerned that the vaccine and booster mandates will lead to lower enrollment?
Ultimately.
Yeah. No. And to the extent that they could, we will have to endure that because there's no way we're not going to have a fully safe environment for our 12,000 students and our 2,000 faculty and staff. It's the number one priority, right? Safe, supportive work environment for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Not compromise that because a few students said they wouldn't come back to LaGuardia because they didn't want a booster.
Okay. So the next question, what will happen for students who need to isolate several times during the semester because of COVID exposure, especially likely for those with kids or working in hospitality, retail, given faculty cannot be expected to make all courses high flex?
Similar to 2 questions ago,
Mm-hmm.
the faculty member and potentially in consultation with one's chair about, finding a way, some alternatives for that student to continue to do the work, maybe do some things asynchronously from home. But that's a case-by-case situation. And by the way, let's hope moving into the spring with declining Omicron, infection rates, positivity rates, hospitalization rates, and so on, that you don't have a scenario where a student gets COVID 3 times in the same semester. And that just gets, be awful, right? But it gets less likely as Omicron recedes and people are vaccinated and get their boosters.
Yeah. So here's the next one. After a 5-day isolation, after a positive test result, do I need to show a negative test result to return to campus? It's possible to keep testing positive for much longer than 5 days, even without symptoms.
Yes, you have to have a negative test result to return to campus. And it's unusual to have multiple positive results when, if you're better. If you're really over COVID, right? So if they're taking the at-home, and I should say another detail here. It's a very important question. So if you get sick, and it seems like almost everybody is, with Omicron, and hopefully it's a light case and maybe even asymptomatic. But you have to wait 5 days from the time of you got your symptoms or that you had your positive test. And then you can test again and see if you get a negative result. You can do a PCR. You can also do an at-home antigen test. And now the federal government is sending those out to everybody. I urge you all to sign up and get them, have them just in case, the test at home. So, but you need that negative result. You need 5 days, basically symptom-free. You can't have a fever. I don't know, it wouldn't make sense to take the test when you have a fever, but you have to be fever-free. You take the test and you need that negative result, but you can use a test, an at-home test, an antigen test. And with that negative result, yes, you can come back on campus. And what happens is you'll give that results to Renee Fuzimore, to her team, and they'll go in and take your cleared for pass, on your phone and update it to say that now you can go back to campus. You get the green box around your ID once again, which you lose when you test positive. We reverse that so you can get back on campus.
So there's another question in the chat. Apologies to circle back on this. However, regarding staff, when is the earliest that we can gain clarity on expectations for spring remote/in-person? As a manager, I'm confident that there will be confusion among staff of how this 55% update applies to them as well. And I would like to provide them clarity as soon as possible.
Right, it's a great question. And, I'll work, and we'll talk about this on Monday in the cabinet meeting, Rochelle. We'll be working with Ron Edwards, our head of HR, to get a policy, the information out to all the managers so they can help staff understand this. For now, there is clarity. It's just, I think, subject to change. 50% until February 28th. And the existing rule, which again is the one that could be subject to change, 70% starting 2 weeks. Well, it was going to be February 22nd. The old rule was 2 weeks prior to start of classes, for us March 5th. Moving it to the 28th, the central office bought us another 6 days, if you will. So think 50% up to February 28th, and then 70% staff in-person presence on campus, 70% after February 28th through March 5th and the start of the semester. Again, I can't promise this. I need every person who asked the question, please, take note of this. I don't know if that's going to change, the 70%. I just know it's being discussed at the central office, and I'm awaiting guidance from the central office. Will we still have the 70% requirement for staff, or will it be changed? Because as everyone is asking, modality came down to 55. And as soon as we get that information, Ron and I get that, and VP Shahir Irfan gets that, we will communicate it. I hope most of you take a look from time to time at the weekly return to campus updates. Volume 34 came out yesterday, or I guess Wednesday night. That's 34 weeks of that. I'm hoping, by the way, with those updates, that pretty soon they'll be really boring, because we'll run out of things to say with respect to this pandemic, and life will start to go back to normal. And maybe we won't have to do return to campus updates. I'd love to suspend them at some point in the spring semester, because things are under control. We'll save a lot of paper and ink and toner.
So something else in the chat. Due to this recent CDC recommendations to preferably not use cloth or surgical mask, will LaGuardia be issuing KN95s or KF94 to staff and students?
I don't know. I think it's a very good suggestion, and I'll ask VP Irfan. I'm not sure if the CUNY central office is already committing to distributing masks like that, or giving us COVID relief funds to buy them. I think it's true. People should be aware of that those masks, for most of what we hear and read, the N95 masks are better than the average cloth mask. A lot of us I know wear cloth masks. We actually, I'll confess, we produced and gave away a good number of LaGuardia cloth masks that are black and red and have the LaGuardia logo. They're not as good. Maybe we shouldn't have done that, but they're not as good as the N95s. And so I recommend people use the safest mask possible. It's still important to wear a mask, very important. I'd like us to be able to give them away, Rochelle. We don't have them yet, but I'll speak to Shahir and we can talk about that next week.
Mhm. Okay, so switching gears a little bit. We discussed the possible new lecturer lines, and there is considerable concern about adding new faculty in the midst of undergoing such enrollment declines. This will complicate the already challenging task of ensuring current faculty have enough classes to meet workload requirements and may require laying off long-time adjunct faculty. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, again, this was a CUNY-wide policy, an initiative that is very important to the chancellor for the whole system, which is simply to improve the educational experience of CUNY students by having more full-time faculty members at every school. And he feels very strongly about it. So just by various formulas they used, it was determined that LaGuardia would get 25 of these new lecturer lines. And what's happening now is those are allocated to the departments, and the departments will begin search processes to identify great candidates. Of course, existing LaGuardia adjuncts are welcome to apply for those positions if they're interested. But they will be, each one of those 25s will be a full competitive search. And again, different number goes, it varies department by department. So this is going to be very important, even, I mean, here at LaGuardia, because it will enable us to have more full-time faculty in classrooms and on campus and serving our students. And I think we all understand that that's really a very, very important thing and very positive. The good news is, and this is actually recent, and I haven't had a chance to talk about it, the chancellor was able to secure an allocation in Governor Kathy Hochul's new state budget that was presented on Tuesday in Albany for the funding for the lines. So the new state budget, as long as the state assembly, the Senate and the assembly, i.e. the legislature, in their negotiations with the governor, if they enact the governor's proposal into law on April 1st, those 25 lines you just asked me about will be paid for by the state. So because again, there was a big funding request for SUNY and for CUNY in the state budget. And our chancellor led the way actually, because he was up to Albany asking for the money before the SUNY chancellor was, to tell you the truth. And our chancellor got there and made a case for this, and the governor agreed. And so the instructor lines will be funded by CUNY, but with money from the state in the state's new budget.
Good. Okay. Faculty teaching courses involving an in-person component last fall observed that students struggled with various aspects of the transition back to campus, including social anxiety at speaking in class, challenges adjusting to commuting and making it to class on time, issues moving between classes or appointments in person and those online, missing class due to COVID exposure or illness, issues with childcare, work schedules, etc. What is the college doing to help students transition back to in-person learning and to support students struggling with more than ever with mental health?
Right, it's really important, Rochelle, and I'm glad. Thank you to the person who asked the question. First, a reminder that, throughout the pandemic, the staff of our wellness center have been doing just a fantastic job, often remote, sometimes in person. Now more, some of it's coming back to campus. And we normally have 6 counselors, licensed clinical social workers or other credentials, but full-time. And with extra money we got from the federal government from some of the COVID relief money, we brought on 6 additional, some part-time counselors. And so, and they're run, first, I just want to remind people, they're an amazing group of highly qualified trained professionals who can help students in a number of ways, including in some cases making referrals if the student needs a level of care beyond that which we are able to provide. But there are 12 of them. They're amazing. And please, if there are students who might benefit from having a conversation with someone there, they're available all the time to help out. So that's just fundamental. And I want to thank everybody who in the Wellness Center under Frank's leadership for doing that work. But there's a lot more, I think, put another way, Rochelle, one of our goals is to really have a great spring semester. And in that, I mean, create a really warm, supportive, engaging student experience. Like, I want LaGuardia to be better than it's ever been for most of our students who will be coming back to campus, right? And in fact, all students. So in the end of the day, some students might have one hybrid and 3 remote classes, right? But that one hybrid, they'll be coming to class a few times, maybe once a week. So whatever the extent of a student's physical presence on campus, we got to give them a welcome back to LaGuardia hug, meaning just surround them with caring people beyond the great talent, our colleagues in the Wellness Center, but a level of, and pardon the expression, I say it a lot, but they pay here, a level of customer service and attention and responsiveness, a series of activities that engage students. We're bringing back athletics. Tuesday was the first day here on campus for our new director of athletics, Andrew Walker, who I hope everybody gets to meet. Andrew, working under the leadership of Interim Associate Dean, Dr. Faye Butler, is going to, and with the team in athletics, is going to start to rebuild our sports programs. We're going to recruit more students with that, especially male students and other athletes. But that's part of building back school spirit, to have those teams. We had a great meeting this week. Dr. Butler and I did with Shayla Pruitt, who's doing great work with clubs and student engagement. And finally, I have this new group, which is a lot of fun. It's the President's Advisory, the Students' Advisory Council to the President. We met this week, and David and a couple of the students in the Zoom were telling me how much they were looking forward to kind of the school spirit. Like, what can we do? Come back to campus and just feel a special vibe, right? So we got to double down on all that. And I think that's a way to help students overcome the trauma, the stress of the past 20 months or whatever it is of COVID, by reminding them that this is their second home, right? And that they can have an experience here that's just as intense, enriching college experience right here on campus with all of us, like I say, surrounding them in a warm LaGuardia embrace.
There's another question, similar one in the chat. What is LaGuardia doing to help our Queens community with residents continuing to struggle from the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, this is a big priority. I think everybody, I've talked about this before. For the Zooms, they make me close the blinds behind my desk here so you can't see the 7 train, but most of you know right behind me is the 7 train. And I always do this. Rochelle's tired of me saying this, but I was like, we got to turn and go that way. We got to look east. That's east. I mean, Manhattan, which is over there, is fine. No problem with Manhattan. But the communities that our LaGuardia students come from are out that way. And we do have to find ways to help those communities recover from COVID. Some of them are neighborhoods with very high levels of unemployment because the people who live there, including, of course, our students, had household or family members that worked in tourism, hospitality, restaurants, service sectors of the New York City economy that were hammered by COVID. And so you have these high rates of unemployment. And let's remember, on last Saturday, which was the 15th, the New York State eviction moratorium expired. Monday was Martin Luther King Day, the holiday, but that means Tuesday, housing court in New York City reopened, actually all across the state. There was a backlog of about 200,000 eviction cases that during COVID that was stopped, but starting Tuesday, those cases are being adjudicated again. I'm not trying to go too far afield here, Rochelle, but what I'm concerned about, there's over 400,000 New Yorkers owe about $1.4 billion in back rent, 200,000 eviction cases pending in housing court. Those numbers include our students and their families. Because of a loss of income, they fell behind in the rent during the pandemic. So absolutely, we have an obligation as an anchor institution in the borough of Queens, to help people get back on their feet and get a paycheck, pay that rent, including our students. 40% of our students, 44% of LaGuardia students attend part-time because they got to work and help somebody or themselves pay the rent. So here's the good news. Under the leadership of Sunil Gupta, our VP over in ACE, we launched last year a number of new workforce programs aimed at helping Queens residents get training, short-term industry certification training in plumbing, electrical, a whole lot of IT, kind of tech support jobs, healthcare, a whole bunch of healthcare jobs, a range of entry-level healthcare positions and more. And enrollment is going really well. We have 12,000 students in the college working on their associate degrees, about 10,000 students at ACE learning English as a second language, getting training to be plumbers, getting training to be phlebotomists or EMTs. And the reason that enrollment has recovered so quickly is because we did a lot of foundation fundraising, right? We've been raising a lot of money through grants and especially through the foundation. And we created these new scholarship programs. So the answer to the question now, we're going into these communities affected by COVID and offering 80% scholarships for the workforce training programs. We've committed $750,000 that we raised from donors to this. And it means, I'm sorry for all these numbers, but we've had a surge in enrollment in these training programs because we raised the money to make them almost free. You got to pay the 20%. So, the farm tech program where you get training as a pharmacy technician, and then we can get you a job in a heartbeat. Like within an hour, we get you a job at CVS, right? But that's $1,600. 80% scholarship means it's $320. We bring the price down to more within reach for the families and friends we have across Queens that need that training. So we're doing a number of things there. I think we'll get some more information out about it. It's just very exciting. I have to say the team over there, they're on campus all the time working really hard. A lot of these programs are in person. And one, just a little anecdote, I got a call, Rochelle, last week, early one morning from Liz Iannotti. Liz runs, she run, I think, for practically 20 years, the English Learning Center, TELC, which is we're the largest provider of ESL, English as a second language education in New York City, okay? She had 188 new students. And she said, well, I'd like to come over and meet them. Okay, so I run over to C building and she's there with a couple of her colleagues because, they had to go through the cleared for system. They're not in CUNY first, they're continuing ed students. So they have to go through all of that on their phone. And it's kind of complicated for some of them. First time coming to LaGuardia. Many of them don't speak, they're coming here to learn English. So they have a hard time sometimes understanding all the typical CUNY stuff we give them in English. But there they were, like so excited to be here. And they were here, many of them, and Liz told me, because we were able to give them a scholarship. We keep doing that all through 2022. There is so much work to do, and it's our obligation to Queens.
Someone else is suggesting that addressing the collective trauma as an institution, that we should make it part of the college's mission. And in fact, that's another way of attracting students to us. I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. And I think we have to acknowledge that sense of collective trauma, but it's not my thing to sit around and wring our hands over it. We have to do stuff. And in terms of some of the stories I was just talking about, I think one of the best things we can do institutionally to break through that collective trauma is service to others.
Okay.
Because it takes the focus away from us when we're trying to help others. And we have so much potential, so much capacity to leverage the great people and talents and assets of LaGuardia in service to others. And I think that's, just for me anyway, it's a way to break through the trauma and focus on the needs of others, and then hopefully feel, a lifted spirit, right? Feels positive in doing that work. So that's my formula.
service to others. Okay, so we have another question in the chat. Speaking of fundraising, how close are we to reaching the 10 million goal for tomorrow's campaign?
We're getting close. The deadline, I get nervous when I say this, Rochelle, is March 31st. We're at about 9.4 million. And we had a big push before the holidays. Karen Dubinsky, the foundation staff, Laura Bartovex, myself, Susie Scanlon, the board chair, and the whole team at the foundation office. We pushed really hard. We got over 9 million. We're at about 9.4. So we've got a little bit to go next several weeks. So yeah, if you see me walking down the hall, on my phone, calling a donor, begging for money, that's what I do. Nice.
So close. Okay, another question. Given that community college students enrollment all across the country has dropped enormously the last few years, with the pandemic pushing it more than ever before, what can we do now to protect the resources of the college, including its diverse faculty and staff, schedules and programs, which accommodate our diverse students so that we can be ready when the neediest students return?
Well, that's a big question, and we're running out of time, but let me take a shot at it. First, a reminder about the next few months. I said it before, I don't like to dwell on it. You have this structural deficit that was worsened by our enrollment decline caused by the pandemic, right? We've lost a quarter of our students, 16,000 students fall of 2019, 12,000 students fall of 2021. That's 2 years, 4,000, 25% of our students, right? So that is what the person who asked this question is absolutely right, that's a phenomenon, sharp decline in community college enrollment across the nation, right? All community colleges. So again, no, we don't have time to cry in our soup or, belabor the point. We have to rebuild. And as I was saying earlier, we have to create just a really great experience for our students, one that leads them to complete their degree programs, graduate, transfer, or get jobs, and one that gets them to tell their friends, family members, people in their communities, hey, LaGuardia is different. LaGuardia is special. Go check it out. So I think we play to our strengths. We do a tremendous amount of community outreach. We do more promotion and advertising of LaGuardia in foreign languages spoken by Queen residents. We double down and we try to get more international students. We double down on adult learners. One of the members of my President's Advisory Council, Students Advisory Council, is 35 years old. And I think of him as a pretty typical community college student. No, he's not 18. And we've got to make this place really welcoming to older New Yorkers who have some college but no degree. Rochelle, there's 700,000 people out in New York City who have a little bit of college, but they never finished. It's pretty common. It's common in the country. And we just got a $1.5 million grant from the Robin Hood Foundation just before Christmas that Sunil Gupta and his colleagues in ACE got to launch a pilot project for CUNY. So we're going to be the launch pad around credit for prior learning, around opening doors to older learners, when possible, awarding academic credit for things they've done in the military, prior job, at a school in another country, getting them on the pathway to a degree. So these are enrollment strategies. They're service strategies, if you will, serving a broader community. But by rebuilding our enrollment, we will eliminate that gap in our budget deficit. And then eventually we'll turn that around. And then we can start to grow again. Fortunately, the federal stimulus money, VP Shahir Irfan has been very careful. Anthony Garofalo, our budget director, super careful on the expense side. And I'm sorry to all of you who feel pinched by this, but we started this fiscal year with $25 million deficit. We're managing that very carefully. And as I say, fortunately, federal stimulus aid will help, at least this year, solve for most of that. So we should be okay in this current fiscal year. July 1st, we're going to have to really push again to build the enrollment for the fall and get back on our feet financially. I'll finally point out, Rochelle, that, and we haven't had a chance because of the holidays, COVID, to tell all these stories. But Laura Bartovix and her team, it's a very small team of people in the grants office, also had a record fundraising year in 2021. And again, I haven't announced this yet, and I need to look, maybe I'll do one of my press newses or something, but believe it or not, they brought in $21 million of federal, state, city, and foundation grant, which is a staggering amount never before done in LaGuardia in 1 year. That was on a base of 16 million they already had under management. So we haven't told these stories yet, but it's going to give us resources to position LaGuardia for a whole lot of new students with new programs and services, with support for students. We're now leading the way with scholarship dollars because of the foundation fundraising. We're providing more scholarships to students, I guarantee you, than any other community college in CUNY. That helps with enrollment too, by the way. So we've got a lot of resources that outside of the CUNY system we brought to the college, and we're going to just keep building and building, restoring our enrollment, and then that LaGuardia glow, will be perceived, and again, will be recognized as we should be for a very special place in CUNY and a unique place for Queens and New York City.
So just a quick question here in the chat. Will the opening session on Thursday, March 3rd be on Zoom or in person?
Well, it's going to be high flex, if you will, because we don't do enough high flex around here, and I rather like it. First of all, viewers will be relieved to know that it's not going to be me talking for an hour like this session with Rochelle. Thank you, Rochelle, again for hosting this.
You're welcome.
No, you ask me these questions and I get excited. And no, the opening sessions is going to be more like a talk show where I'm the moderator and a series of special guests to be announced will answer questions from me. So I'm actually going to play Dr. Rochelle Isaac in this program and ask questions of a panel who will give updates on important things happening all around the college. And we're going to try to do it, it'll be live, but in terms of the format, I think it'll probably be like, we'll be in the little theater here on campus, and then we'll live stream it. And there'll be a live chat and people can ask questions, we're going to figure that out. But because it's early in the semester, it's just at the start of the semester, we don't expect it would be fully on campus.
Okay. A faculty member is asking, she says, I'm scheduled to teach in a classroom where there are no windows. She thinks it's a death trap, and this is in the spring. She's saying help.
Email me and we'll find you another classroom.
Okay. And that's pretty easy. Somebody else in the chat's asking about, they're commenting on something we said. Collective trauma provisions sound great, but how about a massive food drive with management in distributing food?
Great idea. Paging Rhonda Mouton. Paging Rhonda Mouton, Director of LaGuardia Cares. Rhonda and her team have done a great job all through the pandemic with providing emergency relief to students. And she and I had a conversation earlier this week about this, because there's a concern that some of us have about food drives during a pandemic, which is setting up a situation where students have to come to campus on the subway, whatever, to pick up food and then take it home again. Does that expose them unnecessarily to COVID? And so Rhonda, way ahead of the rest of us on this matter, came up with a clever solution: gift cards. And then the foundation provided funding through a couple of generous grants to pay for the gift cards. And these are actually quite well funded right now. So qualifying students who have to see Rhonda and her team and be eligible. But when you get the gift card for food, then you can shop from the convenience of your apartment, online, and have the food delivered. Right. And you can also get exactly what you want, because maybe you don't want what the food bank for New York dropped off at our food bank here at LaGuardia Cares. So the food distribution through gift cards or food gift cards is a LaGuardia Cares innovation. Thank you, Rhonda Mouton, with support from the foundation. So people should know we're doing that. Getting back to the collective trauma, I love the suggestion because it gets back to the idea of all of us locking arms and doing service for others, again, as a way to emerge from the trauma of COVID. And so, yeah, we could, putting aside the clever mechanism of the gift card, we could certainly do community service projects like a food drive, as the faculty member suggested. I also want to quickly note, we're running out of time, I realize this, but we have a group of students in the President Society environment who have been working with faculty from our environmental sciences program and others on an amazing project for this spring, which we just got approval for. And this is the effort to create the LaGuardia Greenway pathway. The long-term goal is to close 29th Street, that's between C Building and the parking lot, and make it a campus plaza with plantings and trees and benches and all kinds of fun, bike racks. But that's long-term. What the city is requiring us to do to demonstrate our commitment to the long-term project and its viability are 2 one-day, what they call pop-up street closures. So coming in April and again in May, Professor Ryan Matt Hamilton sent out an email. Everyone got it earlier this week. Please go pull that email and get the precise dates because I don't have them in front of me. But we're going to need the whole LaGuardia community to come on out to wherever we do this. DOT will let us close the streets for a day, and then we're going to take over those streets and celebrate our return to campus and our community in partnership with Long Island City and the environmental objectives of the students in our environmental sciences program. So just part of a series of events coming up that I think, again, help us come together, do positive things, help the community, and burst through or work our way through the trauma of COVID.
The dates are April 6th and May 11th, 12 to 5 p.m.
Thank you. So thank you, Rochelle. Glad you had that handy.
I did.
Yeah.
So bringing this to a close, any final announcements about the search for the new provost or Middle States?
Well, I think most of you are all pretty well informed of that. I mean, can't say enough to thank all of you who worked on the Middle State Stealth Study. Came in kind of long. I thought it was going to get edited down. No, it's a big document. I think it's checking in at about 3.5 pounds. It's great. And it's, Reem Jafar, Justin Rogers Cooper, Navalaire, and so many of you, Paul Arcario, our provost, of course. And we have a team now. A team was designated this week. The evaluator team was identified by Middle States. I signed off on the list. You have to look to make sure there are no conflicts, right? Like, oh yeah, that's my cousin. So you sign off on the list. We approve the list. It's going to be a virtual visit, unfortunately, the way I see it, because we do well in person. But we'll have a virtual visit in March, and we'll be doing a lot to prepare for that. The self-study is not the only aspect of this, but the virtual visit is the check on the self-study and the way we assessed ourselves. And so big thanks to everybody. We're not done yet. We're done when the team is done with the review, and then we're not really done until June when Dr. Guy Generals, who's the chair of the committee and the president of the Philadelphia Community Colleges, they will give us the final report in June. But that's going well. Thanks everyone for your hard work there. Provost search underway. This week we pulled together a committee of mostly faculty to serve on that search. And we're working on that process to find an alternative to the irreplaceable Paul Arcario, who is going to be greatly missed and is helpful to me, as you all know, every single day. Last thing, if I can, Rochelle, just an acknowledgement. I think something was sent out by our Executive Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Wendy Nicholson, this morning, because she showed this to me yesterday. It's a program for Black Heritage Month coming up, of course, in February. And there are a great number of really exciting, enriching, interesting, and important events. So please look at that material carefully, sign up, and get involved. And to all the volunteers behind the scenes making those workshops, seminars, talks, events possible. Thank you very much. And that's enough for now. It's Friday, Rochelle, come on.
Yes. Thank you, President Adams. Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you to our interpreters.
Thank you.